got saved at the age of 22 years old. I'd like you to have some context as to what I'm saying and who's speaking to you. So 22, I got saved. Jesus saved me. I was tripping on LSD at the time in a place called Hillcrest. My life up until then was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I didn't grow up in a Christian home like some of you did, and it's a huge privilege to grow up in a Christian home. My kids have. I didn't, but got saved, got radically saved, went to Bible college, studied for 2 years. I've been married to the same woman for 33 years. It's a long time. I've got 2 sons in the church with me. One's on eldership, the other's a leader with me. I've got a daughter and son-in-law that planted a church in Australia. I've got a daughter in heaven. I've got 6 grandkids. I'm an old toppy. So you need to listen to me because I'm a grandpa. No other reason. Anybody else got more than 6 grandkids here? Anyone? Wherever I go, I ask that question, and I'm like, there's so many old toppies that they can't compete with me when it comes to grandma. I've still got another 3 to come, so by the time I'm finished, we're going to end up with 9 or 10. That's my claim to fame. Planted a church 22 years ago in Fourways. I'm from KZN. I'm a Durban boy, banana boy. Came to Joburg. Long story how we got there, but God led us there. I did my army. I was a soldier in the 80s in Potchefstroom. So the only experience I had of Joburg was I was in the army in Potchefstroom. I used to AWOL, go to nightclubs in Hillbrow. That's about all I knew until I got saved, until I got called to Fourways and ended up here. So I know Fourways and Cornerstone and nothing else. So we planted, as I said, 22 years ago. It's been a wonderful journey. We came to see people saved. We didn't come to steal people or fish in other ponds. And I'm not easily impressed. I'm not an easily impressed guy. You know, if you start a church and all you do in a new area is suck other people out of other churches, that's not healthy. I hope and trust that you will plant churches, and if you lead a church, you'll go after the lost. Jesus, we're going to talk about that in the next session, but Jesus still saves people. We've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people saved. During COVID, just because, not because we're good or anything, but because we trusted the Lord, we believed that He wanted to save people. And during the 2-year COVID period, you know, the main period, we baptized more people in that 2-year period than in any other 2-year period in the 20 years of our existence. Not because we're clever, not because we're good, but because we trusted the Lord that He was still into the business of saving people even during COVID. And so we've seen lots of people saved. We've got a leadership team of about 100 people, and about 60 of those people are personally baptized. And I'm saying this just to encourage you, not to brag, but just I love to see people saved. I love baptizing people and seeing people come to Christ. And so hopefully I'm going to deposit and leave some of that with you. You know, you're not planning a church just to get a few people together so they can pay you a salary and then you settle. We must always be contending for lost people, and we'll talk in detail next week, later on today, about how we can engineer, how we can, architect, and how we can set up our churches in a way that will attract lost people and keep lost people. Because there's a reason lost people don't come to our churches, and hopefully I can stand on a few toes and deal with a few holy cows. But God wants to save lost people. Amen. So good. So I wanted to share this morning with you just some things that I didn't learn at Bible school. So when I got saved at 22, I went straight to Bible college. I was studying in the construction field. I froze my studies and went to Bible school. They taught us the Bible. They taught us about Jesus. They taught us the Old Testament. They taught us how to flow in the Holy Spirit. It was a very charismatic Bible college. It was great. They taught us about the gifts of the Spirit and stuff like that. But there's a few things they didn't teach us. And I want to go through a few of those with you. The one is I wish that someone had taught me basic leadership skills. The Bible college didn't prepare me for the real world and for real people. And so often I find that we're so good with Christians, we're so good with one another, that we struggle with people that are a little different, people that we don't know how to deal with conflict. We don't have to deal with rogue people. And sometimes we think that everyone that comes to our churches, the Lord has sent. And not always. Sometimes people come to cause trouble. Sometimes the devil sends people. And we need to be more discerning. And I suppose what happens when you plant a church like we did, when you start a church, you put on the light. And I don't know if you know this, but when you put on a light in a dark place, you attract a lot of moths. And that's what happens when you plant a church in a different in a new area. What we arrived in 4 ways, and we planted this church, and we just had a whole lot of people that had been doing the rounds. They were people that were living in 4 ways for a long time, but it had been in every different church and caused trouble in every church. We started church, all of a sudden they're with us. And I remember these guys coming into the church and wanting to take over. So you need to be skillful. These guys, they were gifted guys. They were a little bit rebellious. They could preach, they could teach, they could sing. They drew people towards themselves, and it was difficult. You start a church and you think everyone that comes, God's sending, and you feel that you could be their redemption. And you open your home, you open your heart, you open the building, you open everything up to them, and just to find out that they're there for an ulterior motive. So be careful. Of course, our churches need to be attractional. Churches need to be open. The door is wide that people will come into. But as you come into our church, the doors get a bit narrower. And I wish I'd been prepared for that kind of thing. I remember appointing an elder who was very close to me, was a family member. And I thought we would be his redemption. And there was a guy on team at the time by the name of Alan Frau. I don't know if any of you know him. But I mentioned this to him, and he said, be very careful. He wouldn't appoint this guy. And I thought, I feel, not that I ignored him, but I thought that we could redeem this guy. And we brought him onto our leadership team, and it was a disaster because he was a guy that didn't know how to play team. He was a good football player, and I don't know if you played soccer. I used to play quite competitive soccer. And these guys that when they get the ball, they don't ever pass the ball. They're irritating. They just want to show you how well they can dribble. And they usually dribble 1, 2, 3, and most of the time they lose the ball. They just want to score the goals so that they can look good. You know those guys? We don't like those guys. We want guys that can play team. Get the ball and lay it off. Get the ball, lay it off. And if there's an opportunity for you to take somebody on and score a goal, but not every time you get the ball. And he was a bit like that. We had an issue in the life of the church with a guy that came into the church that was... I'm just going to share stories with you the whole day. This guy came, and he was looking for a wife or a girlfriend, a woman. I don't know what he was looking for, and he was a bit of a snake. And so we threw him out of the church, in fact. Right in the early days of our church, we excommunicated the guy. It's the first and only time we've done that. I don't like doing it. I hope we don't ever have to do it again. Before we've ever had to excommunicate people, since then, they've left before we've had to do it. So that's what makes it pleasant. We don't look like the bad guys. But, so anyway, be careful. We need to be trusting, of course, but just go slow. We build very slow. I think what happens, you get desperate when you plant a church. In some way, you want to grow quickly. You want to get some momentum. But let me tell you, as an older guy who's been planted a church 22 years ago, and who's a grandpa now, just let God build the church. Whenever I started to get nervous and concerned, my wife would say to me, she would turn to me and say, who's building the church? Are you building the church, or is Jesus building the church? And so often we can get in the way of Jesus. We can be nicer than Jesus. We can be more kind than Jesus. And I learned that the hard way. And so I'm here to warn you and to encourage you and to tell you to be very alert. We're there to redeem many people, but not everyone that comes is good for us. And you need to get a discerning spirit very quickly if you want to keep momentum, because once there's a little bit of division and a little bit of a hiccup, it just messes up the momentum. I heard somebody talk about momentum. If you take a train and at full speed and you put a big concrete block on that railway line, the train at momentum will go right through that block and smash it. But if you take a stationary train, train. You just take a little pebble on the train track, and that'll stop it from going. And you want to try and keep the momentum going. Of course, I said Jesus is building the church, but we also we lead alongside Jesus. Basic leadership skills. I wish they had taught me more of that, how to raise and release leaders. You're here this morning. Some of you are church planters. You've planted a church already. Some of you are desiring to plant a church. If you were in our church and you said to me you wanted to plant a church, I would have a look behind you. Are you raising up any people? Are you if I look at you, can I see anyone behind you? Are there any disciples? Are there any people that are following you? And many people say that they're leaders, but John Maxwell said if you say you're a leader and there's no one behind you, you're just going for a walk. You're not a leader. If you can't do it in your local church, if you're not raising up leaders in your local church, if you can't put together or gather together a home group, I don't know what you call them, small groups, connect groups. If you can't gather a group together and raise up a leader and delegate and multiply, if you can't do that in your local church, why would you think you could do it by planting a church? If you can't do it in your local context, then I wouldn't. If I was your one of your elders, I wouldn't release you. I want to see you do it in your own place. I want to see you do it again and again and again. Raise and release, raise and release, raise and release. Because that's what it's all about. If you can't raise leaders, you can't plant a church, because you'll be the bottleneck. And I've watched churches around the globe, and the first thing I'm looking for is, who are they raising up? And we have to be honest with our leadership skill and our leadership ability and our sphere of influence. And I'm not trying to be hard here. I'm not trying to be clever here, but some of the basics, some of the basics are being able to raise up leaders. And if I was looking at this church online just the other day, and I'm not trying to be critical, but this church has been going for 12 years, and the lead guy is doing everything. He's doing the communion, he's doing the singing, he's doing the preaching, he's doing the communion, he's doing everything. And I just asked the question, can you not raise somebody else up and delegate with you? And so that would be my challenge to you. If you're in a local church, come along, and you're not leading a group of any kind, and you desire to plant a church, hook up with a lead guy or some of the elders and ask them to train you and ask them to prepare you. Because, as I said, if you can't do it now, you won't do it then. It'll just be a frustration. Is that good? Is that right? Because we're called to be leaders, called to influence people and release people. I mean, we could talk the whole morning on that. The second one I want to talk about is, I wish I knew a lot more about personal financial issues. Now, I come from a business background. I didn't go straight from school to Bible college to church, and there's very few people that are called to that. I think my brother-in-law is one of them. He used to lead City Hill Church in Hillcrest at the age of 18. His name is Peter. He went straight into the ministry. He had no business experience, no experience out there in the corporate world, and he was called to that. He's a fantastic leader, but there's very few people that are called to stuff like that. Often I can just take my two sons for an example. They both called, Mark and Daniel both called, but they weren't of that type that could go straight from school into ministry. They had to learn. They're in business alone. They run their own business. They have to learn how business works, how finance works, the pressures of life, in order for them to be trained to deal with business people in the church at a later stage. But there are some special cases where people go straight from school into the ministry, but there are few of them. To plan, to budget, to save. Many pastors work for years and years and years, planning a church, work for 20, 30, 40 years, and leave the ministry with nothing. And that's a sad thing, that you would give your life to something. And usually it's because they're so heavenly minded. They so want to see the things of God, reach the world. They want to see people saved, and they neglect their finances and don't have a clue what's going on. Maybe appoint a financial person in the life of the church, and they leave it up to that person, and they busy with the things of the ministry, of preaching and preparing sermons, and they don't know what's going on with the finance. I think that's a very sad thing. So I remember sitting in a meeting with Charles. Were you guys all here when Charles preached a couple of days ago? Charles on eldership with me. He's a lawyer by profession. He's a financial investment banker at the moment. He's a legend. He's an operator. He's a global operator. And he was sitting with. I was at a meeting with him and one of our other elders who's also a lawyer. On our little eldership team, I've got 3 lawyers. I don't know why God, I need 3 lawyers, but there's a reason I need 3 lawyers. But so I remember sitting in a meeting with them. We were talking about property and purchasing and long-term financial goals and all this stuff. I felt so inadequate. I felt so out of depth. I felt a little embarrassed that I knew so little. And you could say that you could delegate to people, but if you need to have some grasp of what's going on, So when it comes to our church, I don't handle the finances. I've got one of my elders that handles the finances, but I know everything. I know where every penny's going. You need to know about the money. Money's not evil. It's the love of money, it's evil. And I try not to know who's tithing and who's not tithing, and in particular, I don't want to know who the big tithers are. So if I have to bring some correction or some rebuke or some direction, I don't want to be concerned that they're going to take their tithe. I remember in the early days of our church, a very wealthy guy came with and this is like 20 years ago, so 100,000 rand was a lot of money. He said, I've got 100,000 rand, I want to put it in the life of the church, but this is where you need to spend it. And I just turned around to him and I just said, sir, I appreciate that, but if you trust us as an eldership, give us the money and we will steward it well. If you don't, we don't want to have you have any control of us, And so you need to be aware of what's happening financially. If you know nothing about finance, do a little course. Ask somebody to teach you, read a few books, but get a grip of what's happening with the finances. And if you plant a church, try and keep your hands off of the finance. Let other people count the money. Let other people deal with the money. Let other people deposit the money and bank the money, but know what's happening in the money. Have a password to the bank account. Get onto the bank account regularly. Check where the money's going. There must be checks and balances. I wish I had known more of that. Just another story. I was helping a church planter. He had been going for about 10 years, and there wasn't enough finances in the life of the church to pay him a proper salary. And he was very frustrated, and he came to me and he said, well, I need to be earning this, and the church is only paying this. And I said, well, what is in the church account? He says, there's only enough to pay this, but I need to be earning this. And I said to him, well, how long do you want to be functioning as a lead pastor? How long do you want this church to exist for and to count for God? He said, well, for a long time. So I said, well, maybe you should change your attitude and make some adjustments. If the church can only pay you 10 and you want 20, if you take 20 out now, this church is going to cease to exist within 6 months. And it won't have an impact. So maybe adjust your budget, trust the Lord, and maybe take the 10 and keep taking the 10 until the church is earning 20. So it's like a very practical stuff. You're probably sitting here saying, like, we wanted some deep theological stuff. That's it. Because this is the stuff that will derail you. You can have, all the doctrines of the Bible, and if you don't watch your finance and know what's going on in the finance or understand the finance, that can be the very thing that derails you. Because guess what? We need money for the church to function. And it's not a bad thing to talk about money. I say this to our church regularly. We serve free cappuccinos and Americanos and stuff on a Sunday morning. We've got 3 coffee stations, one at the back of a hall, one outside, one downstairs. We serve between 500 and 600 free coffees every Sunday. And we do it for free. And so whenever we have a look in, and that's just, we started like that. I don't know how long we're going to continue. It costs us a bit of money, but it's a brilliant tool in our hands. Is what it does, it keeps people there. Because a lot of churches where if you've got 500, 600, 700 people that come on a Sunday, what is the percentage of people that stay to gather, to hang, to chat, to build community? I would say 20%. So this has been a great tool for us to help people connect and to hang. But what I say at our looking in, I say the church, the coffee's free, but it's not free. So if you're going to come to church on a Sunday and take one coffee, you're welcome. But if you're going to take two, that's a little less welcome. And if you're going to take three, now you're being greedy. Like, how many free coffees do you drink on a Sunday morning? And I'm looking at you guys because it's free there as well. How many, Rodney, do you have? So it's going to be tough. Church planting is tough. The money is what derails people. It's bad theology, it's extramarital sexual sin, and it's bad stewardship of money, which derails churches and derails leaders. And I don't know of many churches that planted and there was just an endless pit of money. Because if it was like that, we wouldn't really need to trust God. Most churches that I know, they have to contend for the finances. They have to fight for it. They have to put some principles in place. They have to trust God. And we will never have enough money to do the things that God's called us to do. I mean, I was on a Zoom call with a few guys just last month with Tyron, and he was just talking about how much we need to see churches planted globally. There's not nearly enough money. But the challenge is get your own finances in order. If your own finances in order, and I know many pastors who are in debt, who spend more money than they earn, and there's too much month at the end of their money. And that's bad stewardship. If you can't manage your finances now, if your credit card's in debt, you owe people money, and you're not in a good place financially, you should not plant a church. Until, if you were in our church, I would not release you. I would not lay hands upon you and not send you until I've seen your budget and see where you spend your money until you're in a healthy place. Because if you're not in a healthy place, it's going to get a lot more difficult. You with me? It's a very practical thing, but get your money in order. Number 3, I wish I'd been given, this is at Bible college, I wish I'd been given advice on how to deal with power groups or power people in the church. There's all sorts that come. I wish I'd learned how to deal with them, because you need to deal with people, or otherwise they're going to deal with you. You get people that come into the life of the church that help you, that blow wind into your sails, but there's other people that come and blow wind into your face, and they come with an agenda. I remember when we first planted Four Ways Community Church, we gathered a few people. I joined a running club because I was running the Comrades at the time. My wife is from Denmark. She joined a Danish women's club, and we just tried to get into the community to meet people. We didn't know anyone. And so we met people, and this couple came to our church, and the wife of this couple, she said, we've been praying that you would come to Four Ways, and we thank God that He's answered prayer, because we always had half a vision, and we needed that vision to be completed, and you've come with the other half of the vision. Guess what I said? Oh, that is so wonderful. I didn't say that. I said it as kindly and as humbly as I could. I said, listen, ma'am, we didn't come with half a vision. We came with a full vision. We didn't come with half to find another half. We came with a call. We come with a history of accountable relationships. We're in a submission to authority to many men and women that whose shoulders we stand on. You alone, you've been to many churches, and you're not going to hijack this. I said this in a very pastoral way, because I'm a very nice pastor in a kind way. But that very couple started a home group in our church, and we thought we could be their redemption. We extended a lot of grace, and they had a group of about 20. And then one of the people in their church, in their home group, came to me the one time and said, it seems like you are going in this direction and they are going in that direction. And in those early days of church planting, I used to pick a fight with anything. Like my wife has had to teach me, and I think you should learn from me, is you need to choose your battles. Don't fight everything. But this was something that was worth fighting. So what do you mean that we are going in this direction and they're going in that direction? Well, at home group, they're talking about this. They say, well, Tony is going on this ship, but we're on another ship. And I thought, no, I need to deal with this. If you don't deal with it, it's going to be bad. It's going to be worse than you think it is. So I called a meeting with about 8 people from that home group, and in my lounge, and I said, okay, I just want you to know this is where we are going. This is the direction. This is what God's called us to. We're not alone yet. We've got accountable relationships. And that day, I said, I'm drawing a line in the sand. Either you're with us or you're not with us. But we're not going where you want us to go. We are going here. And we lost them all within, like, overnight, which was the right thing. We had to release them. Sometimes we hold on to people that we should release. I wish I had learned that early up front. So you have to learn this stuff. So we had a place now, church is growing. We have multiple meetings on a Sunday. I'm not saying that to show off or brag or anything. It's just a reality. We see lots of people saved. We baptized, I don't know how many people last year, and this year already we've baptized many people. So the life is there. God's hand is upon us, and I just want to keep out the way and get out the way and let God do what He wants to do. And it's quite difficult to become part of our church. It's very easy for you to visit our church. It's very welcoming. We've got the coffee buzz. There's music playing. We created a wonderful attractional kind of vibe there. So it's easy to come to our church. But to become part of our church, it's not that easy. I remember meeting this guy for the second time. Him and his wife, he had visited our church. He'd been in a few churches, and he didn't like this, and he didn't like that, and he didn't like, but he loves our church. He's been in our church twice. He loves our church, loves the preaching, and I get very nervous when somebody's just been there twice, and they've been around all over the place, and he loves our church. Well, you love it until you run into me. I'm not the biggest guy in town, but I do lead the church, and I'm quite strong with what we believe. And walking down the stairs of our church, we're upstairs, and he says, I want to become a part of a home group. So I said, can you just relax a little bit? I said it nicely again. Maybe I need some better skills, and you guys are here to teach me. I just said, can we just relax? I've only met you twice. I don't know who you are. I can't send you to one of our home groups. These are people I love, and I'd like to get to love you, but I don't know who you are. And he like almost swore at me. He was so angry. He's like, how do I become part of this church? I said, by relaxing. Just chill. We planted this church 22 years ago. You've been here 2 Sundays. And I haven't seen him again either. And I don't mind that, We're not trying to build a church. We're not trying to build a big church, in fact. We're not interested in that. Jesus said He'll build a church. I want to protect the integrity of who we are. There's a culture. There's a way that you do things. It's like people that, if I come to your house, now I don't know what your culture is, but my culture, okay? If you come to my house for the first time and you're hungry and you just open the fridge and you take some food, in my culture, that's very rude. You don't do that. I don't know about your culture. I will offer you the food. Listen, I'm from Durban and Fourways. I don't know about you, Benoni, Oaks and all that. Maybe it's different. Or Brakpan, I don't know. Where are you guys from, Benoni? Is it the same? Or the South? But it's the same way in the church, It's like, come to our church. We welcome you in our churches. But remember, this is a family. Be respectful. The way you operate, the way you want to get involved. I wish I'd learned, was given advice on how to deal with power people, strong people, power groups. Sometimes people come in groups and they say things like, this is what we did in our church. This is what we used to do. And you don't have to fight that. You don't have to be threatened by that or insecure. But this is how we do it, We used to worship for an hour and a half. In our church, our worship was for an hour and a half. It's like, I can't handle an hour and a half's worship. I'm an old guy. My back gets sore. I get distracted. I've got ADD, HD times 10. It's like, it's very hard for me to sing. I'll talk about that later. It's very difficult for me to sing for an hour and a half. I love Jesus as much as you and as much as everybody else. But an hour and a half, that's a long time for me. So if I came to your church and you sang for an hour and a half, I probably wouldn't stay at your church. And I guess many non-saved people wouldn't stay at your church either. Can you imagine a person that doesn't know Christ? Okay? I'm a member of a church. I invite my buddy, whoever he is. He doesn't know anything about church. And I invite him, and he stands next to me on Sunday morning, and we're singing. Maybe he doesn't know Jesus. And we sing for an hour and a half. I got my hands in there. I'm singing in tongues, and we're having a wonderful time with the Lord, and he's just standing there, wondering, how many songs are these people going to sing? And I'm feeling a little awkward because, hey, the guy's he's in tongues here. I don't know what language that is. And there's no interpretation. I've heard that there should be interpretation. Or otherwise, and we just lost and we're crying and we're having a wonderful time in the Lord. And we don't think about these people who are feeling maybe awkward. I'm not saying we should water down. I'm not saying we should compromise. We should make it. We should not worship God wholeheartedly. But an hour and a half is a long time for a guy that's from your workplace. You know, he's going to go back to his colleagues and say, "I'm never going back to that church. They just sing the same song like 100 times." Okay, I know that didn't go down too well, but I'm just going to share my heart with you. Number 4, don't give up your time in prayer and the Word. I wish I'd studied more. I went to Bible college. They taught us about the gifts of the Holy Spirit, and I love the gifts of the Holy Spirit. I believe in all of the gifts. I love in the flow and the anointing and the things of the Spirit. I love that. But they didn't teach me about predestination, about eternal security, about assurance of salvation. And I'm not going to tell you what I believe, but you should have some theology around that. Can a Christian lose their salvation? People are asking that question. I'm not going to tell you what I believe, but you got a theology. It's either you believe a Christian can lose their salvation, or you believe that a Christian can't lose their salvation, or you don't know. You got one of those three. But if somebody comes to you and asks you, can a Christian, a born-again, real Christian, lose their salvation? Don't say, I don't know. Work it out. Wrestle with it. Get some books. Read. Struggle. Get into the Bible. I'm not telling you what position to have, but have a position. Because if I was coming to your church and I said, what do you think about this? And you said, I don't know. It's like, how am I going to lead you? How am I going to follow you? If you don't know, you're supposed to be the leader here. And if you don't know, get to know. Have a position and stand by your position. But don't ever get so busy with the Lord of the work, with the work of the Lord, that you forget the Lord of the work. I remember in the early days, again, I was working for a company, so we planted the church up here, but the church was 4 of us. We didn't have any support. I got employed by a bus company by the name of Patco. You know Patco buses? I headed up their property portfolio. And at night, I was preparing sermons for Sunday, or was visiting people. And my wife, she called me out. And she said, what about us? I had 3 kids at the time. What about us? So I neglected the prayer. I neglected the word because I was so busy with the work of the Lord. I didn't spend enough time with the Lord of the work. Don't be so busy. That's what I'm saying to you. We can be so busy that we don't spend time of silence and solitude. Just hanging with the Lord. My wife loves to sit on the veranda, and in the early morning she wakes up early. And just recently I went to her and I said, "So what are you doing?" She says, "I'm walking with my Lord." I said, "But you're not walking, you're sitting." But I'm walking with the Lord in the cool of the day. Do that as much as you can. Number 5, I've got about 5 minutes. Number 5, I wish someone had told me I could use my business training and exposure. Now, be careful here. Hear what I am saying. The church is not a business. You don't run the church like a business. We don't run our church like a business. Our church is a family. But that doesn't mean we can't use our business exposure and business techniques and training and principles in the church. Let me go back to my sons again. They are under the whip. They run their own IT company. Cash flow is a challenge, as with most businesses. They've got difficult clients. They have to find new work. One son is an elder. The other son is a home group leader. So they've got a calling on their life. I personally desire and trust that they will end up in the ministry, one day full-time ministry. But they're going through some wonderful training. How to negotiate deals, how to deal with difficult people, how to sweat when the money's not coming in, people are paying you late, how to sell, when they don't get their product right and the client is moaning. These are good things for us to know. Because often we can go straight to Bible college and we know nothing about the things of the world, and we try and sit down with a businessman, and clearly we exposed because we know nothing. We only know the things of the church. And as I said earlier, some people are called, have a special calling. There's very few of them, but even they should learn the things of the world, of business and pressure and what people are under. So often we can call people, we know nothing of this. We say, you better be at the prayer meeting on Thursday night at 6 o'clock. And you don't know what pressure this guy's under. But the Lord says, and the real church, you tell the size of the real church by the preaching, how many people, who's at the prayer meeting, that's your real church. And these guys are just saying, hey, man, you know nothing of this kind of stuff. It's true to some degree, but also have a heart for other stuff. I wish a lot. I wish someone would have told me that there are mean and weird people in the church. So we don't like you to come with your tambourine or shofar. So we've had people that have come in the early days, no more. It's like, ma'am, or let me pick on the guys. Sir, you're coming up those stairs. I see you walking up with a shofar. Turn around and go put your shofar in your car. And then when you get home, you can run around your garden and blow your shofar as much as you want, but not here. Because usually those people are looking for attention and they're disruptive. There's some weird people in the church. If you rock up for the first time, any one of you rock up for the first time with a tambourine or a ribbon or a flag or a shofar to our church, you are weird. I've never met you before, and you want to come and make a noise. It's not going to happen in our place. Maybe Cornerstone or one of your churches. I wish I had learned how to deal with criticism. Criticism. In the early days, that would just knock me to the fetal position. So I'm trying my best here, and all you're doing is criticizing. I wish I'd learned how to deal with that. I wish somebody had taught me how to grow my kids up as normal kids. I'm going to just close now, and I'll pick up this maybe later. Because pastors' kids can either be rebellious or weird. I wish I'd been told to continue to date my wife. Spend time with my wife instead of the one time she said to me, it feels like the church is a mistress. You never hear from me, but anybody phones, you run around like anything. You're ready for anyone, to help anyone. What about me? I'm right here. I wish I'd dated my wife more. I wish that somebody had told me about the expectation that I would be omnipresent. Only God's omnipresent, but the church expects you to be omnipresent. You need to be everywhere at all the time. I wish somebody had told me how to minister to dying and sick people a bit better. Amen.